All right, guys. So I have a report here that was just released by Haaretz, an Israeli media outlet, where they are getting into direct testimonies from IDF soldiers who have been participants or witnesses in one way or another of the Israeli genocide in Gaza that we have been covering on this channel for the last year plus. Now, I wish that I could say that this report was shocking or stunning or surprising in some way, but unfortunately, this is basically just more direct testimony of the exact same kind of character of this genocidal war that we have been trying to get out to the public for over a year now. So the headline here from Haaretz is, quote, "No civilians. Everyone's a terrorist. IDF soldiers expose arbitrary killings and rampant lawlessness in Gaza's Netzarim corridor." So this is reporting here from Yaniv Kubovich over at Haaretz. Before we get into the actual details and some of the quotes and testimonies from this report, I want to just give you guys a visual perspective in terms of the region that we're discussing here. So this is the Gaza Strip, as pictured here by the EPC. This is the Philadelphia corridor down here on the border with Egypt. You have Rafah down in the south that has been completely destroyed. You have Khan Yunis a little bit more to the north that has also been completely destroyed. You have Deir al-Balah, and then you have Nusrayat, and you have the Netzarim corridor up here. So essentially, as we get into these quotes, keep in mind that the area that we're discussing here is the pre-October 7th most densely populated place inside of Gaza, which as a whole was already one of the most densely populated places on the face of the planet. They have since essentially successfully conducted a full ethnic cleansing of this entire northern third of Gaza. But everything north of this is the region that we're talking about here in regards to the Netzarim corridor. So let's go ahead and get into some of the details here. They start off saying that the line appears on no map and exists in no official military order, while senior Israeli Defense Force officials might deny its existence in the heart of the Gaza Strip, north of this Netzarim corridor. Nothing more is real. So the first quote they have here is, "The forces in the field call it the line of dead bodies." A commander in the Division 252 tells Haaretz, quote, "After shootings, bodies are not collected, attracting packs of dogs who come to eat them. In Gaza, people know that wherever you see these dogs, that's where people must not go." So brace yourselves, guys. I mean, maybe I should have given a warning at the beginning of this video, but it's only going to get worse from here. So far, we have packs of dogs eating dead human bodies in Gaza that are serving as a warning sign for other civilians in Gaza to avoid that area. This is our starting point here, guys. Now they continue. They say, "The Netzarim corridor, a 7-kilometer wide strip of land, stretches from near Kibbutz Be'eri and to the Mediterranean coast. The IDF has emptied this area of Palestinian residents and demolished their homes to construct military roads and military positions." Now, I don't know what sort of editing that they put on this picture. I mean, I'm not going to criticize it here. I don't know what sort of choices were made in this, but this sort of gives the perspective that this is some historic photograph. Guys, this is from 2023, 2024. This is what Gaza looks like now. So I've seen other updated images from Rafah, from Deir al-Balah, from Khan Yunis, from Gaza City. This is basically what the entirety of Gaza looks like. There is no way that you can possibly convince me that somebody who has looked at the destructive nature of this genocide could possibly come to the conclusion that this is a targeted war against Hamas. Even if you are somebody who tends to side with Israel and their self-defense efforts, or whatever you want to say it as, even if you have a sort of bias towards Israel in that sense, look at the actual images on the ground. There is no way to frame this as a self-defense war. There is no way to use the human shields argument. Hamas is hiding behind civilians. Literally everything in Gaza has been destroyed. They have attacked schools and mosques and churches and refugee camps, hospitals over and over and over again. They flattened residential buildings under the guise that there was one Hamas militant who was sleeping with his family at the time. There is no way that you can look at images like this and conclude that this is a targeted war against terrorists, or whatever you want to say. I encourage you guys, if you are, not yet convinced, although I think most people on my channel, probably are at this point, but go and actually look at the images of Rafah, which Biden previously said was his red line and then allowed Israel to completely flatten to the ground. Look at the images in Gaza. If this is not a genocide, then the word has absolutely no meaning whatsoever. Now, they continue here. They say, while Palestinians are officially prohibited from entering, the reality is more severe than a simple exclusion zone. Quote, "It's military whitewashing," explains a senior officer in the Division 252 who has served 3 reserve rotations in Gaza. He says the division commander designated this area as a kill zone. Anyone who enters is shot. A recently discharged Division 252 officer describes the arbitrary nature of this boundary, saying, quote, "For the division, the kill zone extends as far as a sniper can see, but the issue goes beyond geography." They say, quote, "We're killing civilians there who are then counted as terrorists." He says, the IDF spokesperson announcements about the casualty numbers have turned this into a competition between units. If Division 99 kills 150 people, the next unit aims for 200. So keep in mind, we have had for months and months and months at this point, Israeli representatives, Israeli spokespeople, Israeli propagandists who have been going on every Western media outlet that they possibly can, and they have been insisting that in terms of the casualty numbers in Gaza, in terms of the death toll in Gaza, that if anything, it's an overestimation because the Gaza Ministry of Health is run by Hamas and they're biased in that sense, and so, the civilian casualty rate has to be lower. Here we have a direct testimony from somebody who participated in this genocide, who's saying, no, it's actually the opposite of that. That's the case. In saying that we are going around and massacring civilians and then just arbitrarily designating them as terrorists after we have killed them. So if anything, the numbers that we are getting from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which by the way, only includes direct deaths. It doesn't include necessarily people who have died as a result of lack of medical attention because Israel is restricting medical supplies from getting in. It doesn't count those people as a part of the death toll. So if anything, the Gaza Ministry of Health numbers are a drastic underestimate. And so we're talking about a minimum 45,000 people who have been killed. Upper estimations that I've seen are around 100,000, 200,000, potentially more. We have no idea. Part of the reason why we have no idea in terms of the actual total death toll at this point is because Israel will not allow external journalists to go into Gaza to cover this in a thorough and a neutral way, right? The only journalists that we are still trying to, focus on and to get reporting from are Palestinian journalists who have been massacred and targeted over and over and over again. So it's incredibly difficult to get a specific number, but again, the indications from reporting like this, as well as many other reports as well, is that the death toll absolutely has to be a drastic underestimation at this point. Now, they continue with another quote here from a senior reserve commander. He says, "Calling ourselves the world's most moral army absolves soldiers who know exactly what they're doing. It means ignoring that for over a year, we've operated in a lawless space where human life holds no value. Yes, we commanders and combatants are participating in the atrocity unfolding in Gaza. Now everyone must face this reality." They continue with another quote here. This is a veteran officer in Division 252 who says, "Division commanders now have almost unlimited firepower authority in combat zones. A battalion commander can order drone strikes and a division commander can launch conquest operations. Some sources describe the IDF units operating like independent militias, unrestricted by standard military protocols." And this is exactly what we have been covering for months at this point. Okay, this is nothing shocking. It's nothing surprising. There is no, sort of international law standards that are put in place when it comes to the IDF. They have no operating procedure other than to kill, to maim, to destroy everything that's in their path, right? That's the standard operating procedure. And here you have an admission that, if anything, since October 7th of 2023, the standards have gotten looser over time. And they're now allowing lower level IDF, commanders and division leaders and whatever else the case may be to order drone strikes and to order conquest zones. So you basically have a bunch of completely unregulated genocidal militias who are running around Gaza, killing everything and destroying everything that they see within their horizon, right? That's the kind of war that we are supporting here in the United States. Now, they continue. Again, it only gets worse from here. They got a quote. They say, one time, guards spotted someone approaching from the south. We responded as if it was a large militant raid. We took positions and just opened fire. I'm talking about dozens of bullets, maybe more. For about a minute or two, we just kept shooting at the body. People around me were shooting and laughing, which ties into something that I've covered over and over and over again on this channel before, which is that Israeli soldiers are very unique in their lack of discipline when it comes to their online or social media footprint, right? I've covered the Russian invasion of Ukraine, right? We've talked about the U.S. invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan. We've covered multiple different war zones. I have never seen anything like what I have seen from IDF soldiers inside of Gaza, inside the West Bank, inside of Lebanon. These are people who have no regard for what the rest of the world thinks about what they are doing. They will proudly post, for example, on their Tinder profiles, themselves draped in the lingerie of the women and girls who they are murdering after they've taken over control of their houses, right? They are looting people's houses, they're stealing their underwear, they're doing grotesque things and openly posting about it on their social media profiles. The amount of openly genocidal things that I've seen posted by IDF soldiers on the ground, there's no discipline, there's no consequence, there's no hiding this from any of these soldiers. This is just like, it's a perfect entrance into their mindset. Because if they feel confident enough to post their own war crimes on social media, as if it's some sort of an added social benefit, what does that tell you about their military procedure? What does that tell you about how they view Palestinians as subhuman? What does that tell you about Israeli society as a whole, where those kinds of posts would be popular, would be a social advantage for people to publicly post online, right? A lot of questions that I think people should be asking about Israeli society, the Israeli military, etc. But they continue. They say, the incident didn't end there, with another quote saying, we approached the blood-covered body, photographed it, and took the phone. He was just a boy, maybe 16 years old. An Israeli officer, an intelligence officer, collected the items, and hours later, the finders learned that the boy wasn't a Hamas operative, but just a civilian. These are the people who they're laughing about murdering. They continue with another quote, saying, that evening, our battalion commander congratulated us for killing a terrorist. The person who they just confirmed was a civilian. Now their battalion commander is saying, good job, you killed a terrorist. Saying that he would hope that we would kill 10 more tomorrow. 10 more civilians, presumably, right? They say when someone pointed out that he was unarmed and looked like a civilian, everyone shouted him down. The commander said, anyone crossing the line is a terrorist, no exceptions, no civilians. Everyone's a terrorist. Now, this person says that this deeply troubled him. Did I leave my home to sleep in a mouse-infested building for this, to shoot unarmed people? Well, yeah, you did. That's exactly what you did. Don't know what else you were expecting, but yes, that's exactly what you were doing. Now, I mean, this makes it explicitly clear. They're saying here, we put an arbitrary line in the sand, and regardless if you are a woman, a child, an innocent man who is trying to go and to see their family or to go back to their home or to do whatever, if you cross this arbitrary line in the sand, you're dead, and we will treat you as a terrorist. We will commend our soldiers who kill you, an innocent civilian, and we will demand that they kill 10 more the next day. This is how the Israeli military operates, guys. They continue. They say similar incidents continue to surface. An officer in Division 252's command recalls when the IDF spokesperson announced their forces had killed over 200 militants, saying, quote, standard procedure requires photographing bodies and collecting details when possible, then sending the evidence to intelligence to verify militant status or at least confirm that they were killed by the IDF. He says, of those 200 casualties, okay, only 10 were confirmed as known Hamas operatives. Yet no one questioned the public announcement about the killing of hundreds of militants. So this is how the Israeli military operates in regards to their PR to the rest of the world. You'll see a press release that will be dutifully reported on by Western media here in the United States, the rest of Western Europe, And they will say the IDF just successfully killed hundreds of Hamas militants in this amazing and beautiful operation that they did inside of Gaza. And then you look at reporting like this. They're openly admitting to Haaretz here that, what is that? I mean, what's the percentage on that? 10 out of 200? So we're talking about 5% of the people who they have killed were actual Hamas militants, the rest of them civilians. 10 out of hundreds that were killed. So we're talking about 190 innocent people that were killed just for the IDF to turn around and put out a press release saying, we just killed 200 militants. Now they continue. They say another fighter describes witnessing 4 unarmed people walking normally, spotted by a surveillance drone. Despite clearly not appearing as militants, a tank advanced and opened fire with its machine gun. He says hundreds of bullets. Three died immediately. And he says, the sight haunts me, while the 4th survived and raised his hands in surrender. Well, you know what? It should haunt you. It should haunt you. Now, they also say, we put him in a cage, the survivor of this, set up near our position, stripped off his clothes, and left him there. The soldier also says that the other soldiers passing by spat on him. It was disgusting. Finally, a military interrogator came, questioned him briefly while holding a gun to his head, then ordered his release. The man had simply been trying to reach his uncles in northern Gaza. Later, officials praised us for killing terrorists. I couldn't understand what they meant. Well, they just said exactly what they meant. What they mean is that they do not view Palestinians as innocent civilians. There is no such thing, as they said at the outset of this genocide with top Israeli officials saying there's no such thing as an innocent civilian in Gaza. That's what he's telling you. That's what he's telling you. This was never about a hunt for Hamas. It was never about destroying terrorist infrastructure, whatever the case may be. It was about destroying Palestinian civil society. It was about destroying Palestinian life, making life impossible in parts of Gaza, such that Israel can either fully ethnically cleanse it or eventually resettle it. That's exactly what this war has been from the beginning, and it's been clear to anybody who has been paying attention, right? Somehow this is still a mystery to many people, but they continue here. As we wrap up, they say in another incident, observation posts spotted 2 people walking towards Wadi Gaza, an area designated as restricted. A drone revealed that they were carrying a white flag and walking with raised hands. The deputy battalion commander ordered troops to shoot to kill. They're holding white flags, they have their hands up in the air, and this commander says, shoot to kill. What is this if not a war crime? Now, they say when one commander protested, pointing out the white flag and suggesting they might be hostages, he was overruled. So they don't even give a shit if they're Israeli hostages. Even if they were Israeli hostages, they're still saying, shoot to kill. They don't even give a shit about their own people. That's how much they want to destroy Palestinian human life. They say, quote, I don't know what a white flag is. Shoot to kill. I don't know what a white flag is. 2 people eventually turned back south, but the protesting commander was berated as a coward. Now, final paragraph I'll read to you guys here, and keep in mind this entire report will be down in the description below if you want to go read the entirety of it. But one last thing that stood out to me here. They say this approach isn't limited to Division 252. A Division 99 reservist describes watching a drone feed showing, quote, an adult with 2 children crossing the forbidden line. They were walking unarmed, seemingly searching for something. Quote, we had them under complete surveillance with the drone and weapons aimed at them. They couldn't do anything. He says, suddenly we heard a massive explosion. A combat helicopter had fired a missile at them. Who thinks it's legitimate to fire a missile at children? Well, the IDF. And with a helicopter. This is pure evil. Well, that's a good way of putting it there. And it's a good way to finish off this article. Again, entire thing will be down here in the description if you want to go read the rest of it. But, I mean, again, this is why I say, at this point, what more is there to say about what Israel has been doing in Gaza, the West Bank, now in Lebanon, now pushing into Syria as well for an obvious land grab? What more is there to say about this? The entirety of the international community, for the most part, outside of the United States, Western Europe, our allies, the entire rest of the world recognizes what this is, right? It is only because of continued U.S. support militarily, economically, diplomatically, that this has been allowed to continue. Now, under the Biden administration, the policy has effectively been non-existent, right? The best way that I could portray U.S. policy in regards to Israel is that it's just Israeli policy. There is no difference here, guys, right? Whether it's the influence of AIPAC or DMFI or the Israel lobby in general, U.S. foreign policy in regards to Israel is decided not by the U.S., but by Israel, okay? That's how you have to look at this. And that's exactly how this has been under the Biden administration. You can create fake red lines like we saw with Rafah. You can create, concern and, oh, we're so worried about civilians starving to death and whatever. None of this matters if you are not willing to use the levers that the U.S. has at their disposal in order to hold Israel to account. Those levers being stop sending weapons to them illegally. Not only illegal under international law, but also illegal under U.S. law. Right? This has been the Biden policy. Illegally continuing to arm, to fund, to give diplomatic cover to this genocidal monstrosity. Okay? That's been the Biden policy. Now, we're about to head in to the Trump administration, which is somehow even going to make this worse. Right? We have guys like Mike Huckabee, End Times cult, Christian, members who believe that Israel needs to be in full control of this entire land in order to bring about the end times, and Jesus is going to come back, he's going to fight the devil and whatever, end the world. Guys like Mike Waltz, guys like Marco Rubio. We know who Trump, who took, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from Miriam and Sheldon Adelson. We know exactly what his policy is going to be. It is going to be somehow Joe Biden's policy on steroids. That's what we can expect. So this is not going anywhere, guys. We have to keep on this story. And I'm doing the best that I can to try to report on this, to try to give you guys the best information on this, to understand this from a real, honest perspective, not whitewashed by the U.S. media, not whitewashed by U.S. politicians. We're doing our best here, guys, but it seems almost impossible to overcome some of these barriers, right? I mean, this has continued uninterrupted for over a year now, and there's no end in sight. I mean, there are some discussions about a potential ceasefire that could be on the horizon. We've seen this story over and over and over before during the last number of months, repeatedly sabotaged by Benjamin Netanyahu in terms of ceasefire negotiations. So I won't believe it until I actually see it, but there needs to be accountability at the end of the day, right? I mean, we have U.S. media, just a couple other things I wanted to point out here, and then I'll end off the video, but we have, U.S. media, Western, European media as well, including the BBC here, as pointed out by Owen Jones. And just in terms of their disgustingly biased coverage, you have a comparison here of mentions of Israeli and Palestinian deaths by the BBC. And then you have the comparison here between Israeli and Palestinian deaths as actually have occurred over the last year plus of this genocide. And then you also have here reported by The Nation how Sunday morning news shows promote an anti-Palestinian agenda for Washington. And they point out that some of these top Sunday shows have literally not featured a single Palestinian guest. Not one. Not a Palestinian, not a Palestinian American, not one since October 7th of 2023, right? So, I mean, again, guys, none of this is shocking. None of this is surprising, unfortunately, because it's exactly what we have been covering over the last year. But at some point, this needs to stop, right? At some point, we need to cross a line that we address this in a more serious way. The U.S. has lost total credibility, any shred of it that they had left on the international stage. Israel needs to be treated as the rogue state that they are. You need to have some sort of accountability for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant and the rest of these IDF commanders and soldiers who have been committing rampant war crimes over and over and over again. If we are going to believe that we need to have international standards in place under international law through the ICJ or the ICC, if we are going to believe in humanity to the point where we hold people accountable who violate basic human dignity on this kind of a scale, then we need to take action on this, right? You cannot allow people like Benjamin Netanyahu to act in the way that he has over the last year. There needs to be accountability for top Israeli officials. There needs to be a total reckoning in Western media as to how you have been doing propaganda in favor of a genocide for over a year now. I mean, we need a real fucking wake-up call in this country and around the world, because this is obvious. It's been obvious since day one, and it's obviously a moral stain on not just our country, but any other country that has been subservient to what Israel has done over the last year.
Politic guy has the best politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying